At first, I didn't think it was real. I woke up to this blinding light, and I was transported to another place. Pluto TV! Then I heard a voice.
Come with me if you want to live.
There were thousands of movies and shows, and they were all free.
The truth is our sin.
It's just so beautiful.
On Pluto TV, free streaming of Terminator 2, Fringe, Arrow, The 100, and The X-Files may cause excitement, loss of sleep, and sudden belief in extraterrestrials. No credit cards or alien encounters necessary. Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan. Tonight, 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
The big game commercials are basically must-see TV. This year, Elf Cosmetics went all out with an absurdly funny telenovela called Melissa. It stars Melissa McCarthy, Nicholas Gonzalez, Itati Cantoral, and Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil. The Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil is an ultra-glossy tinted lip oil that nourishes, hydrates, and enhances your lips' natural color.
Watch the full episode of their new Elf novela on soyunbaño.com.
Over the last couple years, didn't we learn that the folding chair was invented by Black people because of what happened in Alabama?
The Montgomery Brawl.
This Black History Month, the podcast Selective Ignorance with Mandy B unpacks Black history and culture with comedy, clarity, and conversations that shake the status quo. The Crown Act in New York was signed in July of 2019, and that is a bill that was passed to prohibit discrimination based on hairstyles associated with race. To hear this and more, listen to Selective Ignorance with Mandy B from the Black Effect Podcast Network on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
1969. Malcolm and Martin are gone. America is in crisis. And at Morehouse College, the students make their move.
These students, including a young Samuel L. Jackson, locked up the members of the Board of Trustees, including Martin Luther King Sr. It's the true story of protest and rebellion in Black American history that you'll never forget. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba.
Listen to The A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to a special edition of The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. We're going to be taking your calls this hour about the war in Israel and Gaza. We've got two fantastic panel guests who will help us answer your questions, and we welcome the listeners of WAMU in Washington, D.C. and WBEZ in Chicago this week. As always, our house DJ Tolliver is here. Hi, Tolliver.
Hey, how's it going, Jeremy? Honored to be here. This is what the show is all about.
This is what the show is all about, is heavy topics like this, but allowing people to take part in what we hope will be a very civil conversation. Tolliver, you're in Nashville this week, where, as we've seen in places around the country, hundreds of people gathered, in that case, to show support for Israel following the horrific attack by Hamas last weekend, in which terrorists gunned down Israelis in their towns, in their homes, at a music festival. 1,300 at least slaughtered, many hostages taken, including some Americans. Soon after that attack, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declared war on Hamas, and Israel has been pounding Gaza with airstrikes, killing more than 1,400 Palestinians already. As the death toll mounts on both sides of the border, Israelis and Palestinians are bracing for a long and brutal war, and there have been protests in some cities in the U.S. against Israel's bombardment of Gaza. And so this hour, we want to know from you, what are your questions about the war in Israel and Gaza and its wider implications? This is a difficult topic for many, and we hope, as always, to provide a place for civil conversation. Tolliver, what is our phone number?
It's 8444-MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. You can also write to us at listentothemiddle.com.
And before we meet our panel, the attack on Israel was personal for so many people in the United States. I spoke earlier with Jeremy Fine. He's a rabbi in Deerfield, Illinois, in the Chicago suburbs at Congregation B'nai Tikva.
This last week has been the worst week of my life. It has probably been the worst week of many Jews' lives. We have not experienced anything this atrocious since the Holocaust. And the pain comes from a multitude of levels. It comes from the murder. It comes from how people were murdered. It comes from hostages and uncertainties of what's becoming of people. But I think on another level, that is something we maybe have never seen, is that people are celebrating and calling for more murder.
Who are you talking about when you say that?
Well, there's college campuses, there's major cities where they're celebrating the beheading of children. There's other countries around the world who are calling for more destruction, and not just in Israel, but beyond. I don't believe in my life there's one person who roots on and celebrates the death of anyone.
As you talk to members of your congregation now, what kind of advice are you giving them to get through this next week, these next weeks, these next months as this situation continues to unfold?
I mean, the first advice is to take care of themselves and the people around them, to give back where they can, whether that's in volunteerism or financially. It's to hold hope as high as we can. It's to pay attention to the right news. I mean, social media can be a place of garbage. It can be very painful. And it's also to find where allyship. I think one of the other things that's going on with Jews right now is we are all taking a mental note of who checked in and who cared and who loved and who stood up and who didn't, because this is not normal. No one should ever celebrate death. It should not happen. You want a Palestinian state? I can understand that. I cannot empathize and understand rape and murder of babies and killing at peaceful music festival. None of this is on the moral compass that most people live on, and hopefully the vast majority of the world lives. Or we're all in trouble, not just Israel and Jews. Humanity is in trouble.
Rabbi Jeremy Fine in Deerfield, Illinois. We know that many of you have connections to the region. We want to hear from you. Call us 844-464-3353. Let's meet our panel guest. Joining me from Princeton, New Jersey, Deborah Amos, longtime international correspondent for NPR, now at Princeton University. She's the author of 2 books on the Middle East and has won many awards for her reporting. Deb, so great to have you here.
Great to be here. It's a terrible time to be talking. Yeah. But thank you for asking me.
Well, and let me just ask you briefly before we get to our other panel guest. You've covered the Middle East for decades. How monumental is the attack that happened and the response?
So I came in 1982. That was my first big story. Israel invades Lebanon. That was big, but this is bigger. I don't think in my long term in the Middle East that I've seen something like this. I think it surprised everyone, and perhaps maybe surprised Hamas most of all. I mean, I've been thinking about this over the past couple of days, and it occurs to me that it never occurred to them that that border was as vulnerable as it turned out to be. And, all of a sudden realizing where they were must have been extraordinary. 150 hostages. It's just unbelievable what has happened and what could happen simply because they breached that wall and had full reign. If you look at some of the numbers of how long it took Israeli soldiers to get to some of those places, it was hours and hours that people were on their own. So I think that's also part of the pain that they were left alone, that they were on their own. And, the cases of survival were small, right. And people understand that.
And we've seen some of the videos of just the anger from people about how long it took the authorities to come and help them, if that was even possible. Let's bring in our other panel guest, Nathan Thrall, author of the new book, A Day in the Life of Abed Salama, Anatomy of a Jerusalem Tragedy. He lives in Jerusalem, but is joining us tonight from London. Nathan, welcome to you.
Thanks very much for having me.
Well, we heard from Rabbi Fine, who said this was probably the worst week for Jews everywhere. I know that you've been in touch with people, Palestinians in Gaza, not affiliated with Hamas. What are you hearing?
Well, one of my closest friends lives in Gaza, was a colleague of mine for many years, is like an uncle to my children. And he had shrapnel in his living room. He has gone out to the market and waited in line to get bread. There is a collective punishment of the people of Gaza right now, where Israel is cutting off water, food, electricity, fuel to 2.1 million people. And he's seeing that the stocks on the shelves are already getting low. He's separated from his daughter. He's quite recently a grandfather, and he's separated from his daughter and his grandchildren. And looking out his window, he sends me videos of just the night sky, and it's complete darkness, and then punctuated by red flames just all around him. And it's terribly frightening to be living in that kind of vulnerability. When he went out into the streets, he said that he had never seen Gaza so thoroughly razed by bombing. And he's lived through all of the past wars.
And it may be that the worst hasn't even started to happen yet when it comes to what may happen in Gaza in the days ahead. The phone lines are lighting up, so I want to at least get to a call before we have to take a short break. Suha is joining us from Richmond, Texas. Suha, go ahead.
Yes, hi, good evening. Thank you for bringing this topic up. As a Palestinian American, my question is, why is it that the lives of Israelis and Americans take precedence over the Palestinian and the Palestinian American lives?
And why do you think that, Suha, that's the case?
Well, I mean, we had a journalist, a Palestinian American journalist, that was killed by the IDF. And there was promises by Israel that they were going to get to the bottom of this to find out why. Well, we as Palestinians, we know there's never going to be any answer, and there's never going to be the honest truth. And it's happened time and time again. Rachel Corrie is another one. You know, it's proof, case in point, no food, no water, no electricity. These are basic humanitarian needs for everybody. Why is it that it's okay to cut it off to Gazans and Palestinians, but it's not okay if that were to happen with Israel?
Suha, thank you so much for that call. Deb Amos, I'll go to you on that, as you've covered this for many years. What do you say to Suha?
So I would be interested to know, and I don't know if we know this yet because it was just announced today, that the U.S. is sending chartered flights for people who can't get out of Israel. There are Palestinian Americans and there are Israeli Americans. It would be, I mean, look, nobody can get out of Gaza. So that, we can't consider that because it is completely closed off. But there will be people getting on those planes. I would be shocked if Israeli Palestinians and Israelis and Palestinians were not equally allowed on those planes as Americans. It's so hard to answer a question about does the U.S. government, I'm assuming that's what you mean, value American Israelis over American Palestinians? I don't even know how to count that. So it's really hard to answer that question.
Well, and in fact, we're getting notes online similar. Michael in Stillwater, New Jersey, said we should stand equally for the Palestinian people as we do for the Israeli people and their descendants. Now, at this moment in the show, in a normal show, Tolliver, you would have some music for us, but not tonight.
That's right. Given the gravity of the topic, I'm going to bring you some context as we wait for your calls and your messages. Last weekend's attack has been compared to the Yom Kippur War 50 years ago. Here's the news of that attack on NBC in 1973.
It is an all-out war. That's how Israeli Defense Minister Moshe Dayan describes an invasion of the Golan Heights and the east bank of the Suez by Syria and Egypt. The surprise attacks came early this morning in the air and on the ground.
50 years ago. Stay with us. We're going to be right back with more of The Middle.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan. Tonight, 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Welcome to the A Building. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba. It's 1969. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. had both been assassinated, and Black America was at a breaking point. Rioting and protests broke out on an unprecedented scale.
In Atlanta, Georgia, at Martin's alma mater, Morehouse College, the students had their own protest. It featured two prominent figures in Black history, Martin Luther King Sr. and a young student, Samuel L. Jackson.
To be in what we really thought was a revolution. I mean, people were dying.
1968, the murder of Dr. King, which traumatized everyone.
The FBI had a role in the murder of a Black Panther leader in Chicago.
This story is about protest. It echoes in today's world far more than it should, and it will blow your mind.
Listen to the A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Ryder Strong, and I have a new podcast called The Red Weather.
It was many and many a year ago in a kingdom by the sea.
In 1995, my neighbor, Anna Trainer, disappeared from a commune.
It was hard to wrap your head around. It was nature and trees and praying and drugs.
So no, I am not your guru.
And back then, I lied to my parents, I lied to police, I lied to everybody.
There were years, Ryder, where I could not say your name.
I've decided to go back to my hometown in Northern California, interview my friends, family, talk to police, journalists, whomever I can, to try to find out what actually happened.
Isn't it a little bit weird that they obsess over hippies in the woods and not the obvious boyfriend?
They have had this case for 30 years.
I'll teach you sons of to come around here with my wife. Boom, boom.
This is The Red Weather. Listen to The Red Weather on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Segregation in the day, integration at night.
When segregation was the law, one mysterious Black club owner had his own rules.
We didn't worry about what went on outside. It was like stepping in another world.
Inside Charlie's Place, Black and white people danced together. But not everyone was happy about it.
You saw the KKK?
Yeah, they were just dressed up in their uniform.
The KKK set out to raid Charlie, take him away from here.
Charlie was an example of power. They had to crush him.
From Atlas Obscura, Rococo Punch, and Visit Myrtle Beach comes Charlie's Place, a story that was nearly lost to time. Until now. Listen to Charlie's Place on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. If you're just tuning in, we are a national call-in show focused on elevating voices from the middle, geographically, politically, philosophically, or maybe you just want to meet in the middle. My guest this hour, Deb Amos, longtime international correspondent for NPR, now at Princeton University, and Nathan Thrall, a writer based in Jerusalem, whose most recent book is A Day in the Life of Abed Salama, Anatomy of a Jerusalem Tragedy. We're asking you for your questions about the current war in Israel and Gaza and its implications in the region and for the United States. If you've got friends or family in the region you want to tell us about, give us a call. Tolliver, what is our number?
That number is 8444-MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353.
And let's go back to the phones. Eric is joining us from Fairfax, Virginia. Hi, Eric. Welcome to The Middle. Go ahead with your question.
Hey, thank you, Jeremy. And quickly, my condolences to the people of Israel, the barbarity they face, and to the innocents in Gaza who are going to reap the whirlwind of Hamas's decision. I'm a 26-year Army veteran officer, 2 tours in Iraq as an Iraqi Army advisor. This is my background in military historian. And it was good Tolliver put on the 73 war as an example. The other example that's been put up, and this is a cautionary tale, and my question is around this. We're hearing already, this is Israel's 9/11. Well, from America's standpoint, after 9/11, we couldn't conceive that a terrorist organization, a non-state actor, could carry out such a sophisticated attack without direct state-sponsored material and technical support. And it gave us, we wanted to strike out, and we went and we conflated the war into something it was not, making the axis of evil, Iraq, Iran, Syria, North Korea, as targets of our ire. And I guess my cautionary tale and question for Israel is, I already hear the calls for striking out against Iran, the calls for this must be larger in the axis of Russia and Iran. So my question is, what should you believe Israel needs to do to maintain this focus, and the United States especially, maintain this focus on a war of what it is and keep it from conflating and expanding into a war that it was not initially at least intended to be, at least on the Israeli side?
Great question, Eric. I'm going to go to Nathan Thrall with that. How does this war stay, or can it stay, between Israel and the Palestinians and not spread into a wider regional war?
Well, first I would say that the war is now being conducted rather than between Israel and Hamas, as it should be, between Israel and the Palestinians, as you say, with the decision to cut off food, water, and electricity to 2.1 million innocent people. So the first thing is, I think the focus needs to be on Hamas and not the innocent people of Gaza. The wider conflagration with Hezbollah is something that Israel very much does not want to happen. The United States does not want to happen right now. And I think that the degree of devastation that we are going to see now in Gaza is worrisome enough. And even if we just look at what Israel is facing with respect to Gaza, they are very likely to do a ground invasion. And that ground invasion is going to be extremely bloody. And the onus is on the Israeli government to show the Israeli public that they are going to do something qualitatively different in response to an attack that it was qualitatively different. And how they can do that without losing tremendous Israeli life, and how they can do that with an exit strategy, is something I don't think they really have a good answer for.
Well, and Deb Amos, to Nathan's point about this being now a war between Israel and the Palestinians, not just Hamas, because they're cutting off aid and food and water to the 2 million people in Gaza. What Israel and what the government has said is, if Hamas is going to operate out of schools, out of hospitals, out of civilian infrastructure in Gaza, then how are we supposed to go after the people that we're trying to go after without affecting everybody else?
So 2 things. One is, there's not been an election in Gaza since, 2005?
Right.
So it's not that the civilians support this. There were some people that were happy. We saw them. And of course, who else would you photograph on the street but the people who are cheering? So we don't really know how many people were stewing in their homes thinking, okay, this is really going to get to us. The idea that if you cut off food, water, medicine, gasoline, if the idea is to have Palestinian civilians rise up against Hamas, that is unlikely. That is really unlikely. 2, there are plenty of retired former Israeli intelligence officers who have said very publicly in Israeli newspapers, you cannot eliminate Hamas. You tried that once. And the last time you did it, what happened is, yes, you decapitated the leadership, but not the movement. And then we didn't know who the leaders were. It was harder then until we knew, who was running this show. So my guess is that there are divisions in Israel about what this strategy is, because there are plenty of experienced Israeli military people who say, yes, you're saying you're going to destroy Hamas. The problem is you cannot do it.
Let's go to another call. Francis is joining us from Hanover Park, Illinois. Hi, Francis. Welcome to The Middle.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. Go ahead with your question.
First, I want to say, as a humanitarian, I'm shocked and horrified by what happened with the surprise attack.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just worried about, is there a way for peace forwards? Because with Israel cutting off food, water, electricity, everything to the Gaza Strip, it just doesn't seem like what is their end game? How can this conflict stop without it? It seems like Israel's only move forward is to just take over and destroy all the buildings and kill all the people there, unfortunately.
Francis, thanks for that call. Nathan, is there an end game? Do you see, is there any way that whatever happens now ends up with a more peaceful region?
So I think that, no matter what happens in the coming days and weeks and months, Israel is going to find itself in a situation in which it controls the lives of an equal number of Jews and Palestinians. 7 million Israeli Jews, 7 million Palestinians between the river and the sea, the territory under Israel's control. And the vast majority of those Palestinians are living without basic civil rights. And that is the greater problem that Israel does not have an answer for. And if we want to stop seeing this horrific violence and this terrible bloodshed, we need to examine this obviously unjust system that is leading repeatedly to violence. And what we all too often are doing is we see the violence, we pay attention to the violence, and we call for a restoration of calm. But what is that calm? What is that status quo ante that we are calling to return to? It's calling to return to a situation that is filled with daily pain, with daily violence. And that was really the aim of my book, A Day in the Life of Abed Salama, was to focus people on the lives of Israelis and Palestinians living in this awful system. And the brutality that we've seen, both in the collective punishment and in the Hamas attack on Saturday, that brutality and that pain and that dehumanization is something that all of these people are living with, and the characters in my book are living with. And earlier somebody had spoken about celebration and dehumanization. My book is about a bus accident of a group of kindergartners, Palestinian kindergartners, who were on their way to a play area, and it was struck by a giant semi-trailer. The bus flipped over and caught fire, and innocent bystanders came and pulled these kids off of a bus. And by the time the Israeli fire trucks came, all of the kids had been taken off to different hospitals. And afterward, there were Israelis who were young Israelis without using pseudonyms, who were posting online, celebrating the deaths of kindergartners. And this was so upsetting to a left liberal Israeli TV anchor that he created a whole TV feature about the Israeli reaction to the deaths of these kindergartners on the school bus. And it goes in every direction, this level of dehumanization and pain. I tell the story in the book of a Palestinian doctor who was just on her way to deal with a group of local Bedouin when she came upon this burning bus. And as she is helping to rescue children from this bus, all she can think about is her experience as a young doctor in Tunis in 1985 when Israel bombed the PLO headquarters, and she was picking up body parts out of the rubble. And the Israeli paramedics who arrived very late on the scene, they're looking at the burned out shell of a bus, and they're thinking of the suicide bombings, the horrific suicide bombings that they had to live through. And I really feel that it's incumbent on all of us to make sure that we put our eyes on the situation, the everyday lives of these people, even when, and especially when, we're out of these periods of escalation in Gaza.
Let's go to another call. Aaron is joining us from Alexandria, Virginia. Aaron, welcome to The Middle.
Hi. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. So I'm reminded, I'm an Israeli American. I'm reminded of a Golda Meir quote back in around the Yom Kippur and the 73 war, where she said, if the Arabs put down their weapons, there would be peace. If Israel would put down their weapons, there would be no Israel. And that quote has been in my mind for a few days. So I wanted to sort of share that quote, but also ask about the solution to, how you respond to such a heinous act of terror that Hamas had done to the towns of the south, and in Israel, everyone knows someone who has been affected by this, and I'm definitely affected emotionally by this. But how do you then target? Because one of your panelists said, well, you want to target Hamas, not the Palestinian population, which I completely agree with. But how do you target an organization that embeds itself within a densely populated area, and hides behind these citizens, and now hides behind the hostages? How do you target just Hamas when they use those people, their own people, as human shields?
Aaron, thank you for that call. Deb Amos, let me go to you on that. This is what we brought this up a bit earlier, but how does Israel target just Hamas in a place like Gaza, which is, by the way, 140 square miles and 2 million people?
So for starters, we are at the beginning of the beginning. I mean, there's so much we don't know about whether this is a one-front war, a two-front war, a three-front war. I mean, the longer this goes on, we will have the magnitude of additional horrors will grow. So maybe someone could consider another way to do this, because I was in Israel in 2021, the last time there was a fight between Israel and Hamas. 2 years later, the Israelis often talk about mowing the grass. They say that very, very openly, that Gaza can be contained, Gaza can be dealt with, Gaza can be kept calm. You just have to, every once in a while, there's going to be thumping back and forth. This event shows that is a failed policy. 2 years later, we're back here again in a catastrophic moment. And so one hopes when clear thinking returns. I mean, we are still in just, a terrible time of grief, and it's hard for people to be rational about what should happen next. But there has to be some thought to maybe the policies that have gone before have been failures, and someone needs to rethink this.
Let's go to Bruce in Chicago. Bruce, welcome to The Middle. Go ahead with your question.
Yes, let me turn my radio down. My question to you is, why since 1948 the United States, Europe, and the United Nations has supported Israel's takeover of Palestine? And over those years, the United States, the Europeans, and the United Nations has failed to support Palestine in its own homeland. As I'm seeing it, Israel is practicing apartheid in the name of religion. This is the same game plan that has been played in South African apartheid, American Indians killing, slavery in America, South Pacificers losing their islands in Southeast Asia. This is the same game plan in a different part of the world, and I would like to know, what are these politicians going to do to stop this?
Bruce, thank you for that question. Nathan, if you look at even just his use of the term Palestine, that is not recognized by the United States, by most of Western Europe at this moment. A lot of the world does recognize the quote state of Palestine. But what do you say to Bruce?
Well, I think that, he is responding to an international consensus among human rights organizations that Israel is practicing apartheid as defined in international law. This has been the finding of all the leading Israeli human rights organizations, the leading Palestinian human rights organizations, and the leading international ones, Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch. So that is, a consensus in the international human rights community. It's also been the finding of former Israeli cabinet ministers, former Israeli attorney general, and now even most recently, the Netanyahu appointed director of the Mossad himself said Israel is practicing apartheid. So I think that the United States is deeply complicit in that and unwilling to face that.
Stand by it right there. Tolliver, this conflict in the Middle East has gone on for such a long time. There have been many low points, as we are in right now, certainly. Also, some perceived high points.
Here's a clip of former President Bill Clinton just after the signing of the 1993 Middle East Peace Agreement.
We have been granted the great privilege of witnessing this victory for peace. Just as the Jewish people this week celebrate the dawn of a new year, let us all go from this place to celebrate the dawn of a new era, not only for the Middle East, but for the entire world.
Former President Clinton speaking in 1993. Got more calls coming right up on The Middle.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan. Tonight, 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Welcome to the A Building. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba. It's 1969. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. had both been assassinated, and Black America was at a breaking point. Rioting and protests broke out on an unprecedented scale.
In Atlanta, Georgia, at Martin's alma mater, Morehouse College, the students had their own protest. It featured two prominent figures in Black history, Martin Luther King Sr. and a young student, Samuel L. Jackson.
To be in what we really thought was a revolution. I mean, people were dying.
1968, the murder of Dr. King, which traumatized everyone.
The FBI had a role in the murder of a Black Panther leader in Chicago.
This story is about protest. It echoes in today's world far more than it should, and it will blow your mind.
Listen to The A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Ryder Strong, and I have a new podcast called The Red Weather.
It was many and many a year ago in a kingdom by the sea.
In 1995, my neighbor, Anna Trainer, disappeared from a commune.
It was hard to wrap your head around. It was nature and trees and praying and drugs.
So no, I am not your guru.
And back then, I lied to my parents, I lied to police, I lied to everybody.
There were years, Ryder, where I could not say your name.
I've decided to go back to my hometown in Northern California, interview my friends, family, talk to police, journalists, whomever I can, to try to find out what actually happened.
Isn't it a little bit weird that they obsess over hippies in the woods and not the obvious boyfriend?
They have had this case for 30 years.
I'll teach you sons of to come around here and my wife. Boom, boom.
This is The Red Weather. Listen to The Red Weather on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Segregation in the day, integration at night.
When segregation was the law, one mysterious black club owner had his own rules.
We didn't worry about what went on outside. It was like stepping in another world.
Inside Charlie's Place, black and white people danced together. But not everyone was happy about it.
You saw the KKK?
Yeah, they was dressed up in their uniform.
The KKK set out to raid Charlie, take him away from here.
Charlie was an example of power. They had to crush him.
From Atlas Obscura, Rococo Punch, and Visit Myrtle Beach comes Charlie's Place. A story that was nearly lost to time. Until now. Listen to Charlie's Place on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. We're talking about the war in Israel and Gaza following Hamas's surprise attack on Israel. We want to hear your questions about the war and its implications for the Middle East and beyond. My guests are Deborah Amos, longtime international correspondent for NPR, now at Princeton University, and Nathan Thrall, author of A Day in the Life of Abed Salama, Anatomy of a Jerusalem Tragedy. He's based in Jerusalem. Our number 844-4-MIDDLE. Let's get back to the phones. Brant is joining us from Houston, Texas. Brant, welcome to The Middle.
Hey, guys. Thanks so much for having me on. I think my question probably floats around the same question a lot of other callers have had, which is the approach that Israel is using right now to address or take care of the perpetrators of this atrocity, the most effective way of doing that? And the reason I ask that question specifically is because I remember after the Afghanistan war, there was a lot of reflection about whether or not the invasion was the most effective way. And there was a PBS Frontline episode that talked about how prior to the actual invasion, they had sent in select specialist forces with kind of unlimited money and resources to go infiltrate the networks and find the relevant individuals. And then when that was eliminated as a program, there was a lot of regret as though that had actually been a very effective means of doing the job, but had been eliminated. So want to get your thoughts. Appreciate for having me on.
Thank you, Brant. Deb Amos, so interesting to bring up Afghanistan because there are probably a lot of people that look at America's longest war and say, was that really necessary to achieve the aims of the government following the attack of 9/11?
They do, but look, let's look at where we've been, where Israel and Palestinian issues have been for quite some time now. How the Israelis view it is it's a manageable occupation, that if you give enough economic incentives, that Palestinians will be happy with their limited rights. And Israelis looked outward to the Abraham Accords. Let's make, some relations with our Arab neighbors. The big prize was on the way, where the Israelis and the Saudis were talking about a rapprochement. And the Palestinians kind of took a backseat to all of those things, even when the government that was before Netanyahu, they had the same approach. We're not going to talk about the Palestinian issue. It's just a matter of management. And what this event shows is that is a failed policy, that you cannot continue with doing business as usual. It is likely that the Abraham Accords could, be a casualty of this. The Saudi rapprochement, just as well. I mean, it was very close. There were, the tourism minister of Israel was in Saudi Arabia. There was a picture of a rabbi having a prayer service in a Saudi hotel where you could see the skyline of Riyadh behind him. That's how close it could have been. There may be a resuscitation of it at some moment, certainly not now. But this whole idea that you could simply manage the occupation of this many people turns out to be not true.
Let's go to another call. Beth is joining us from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Beth, welcome to The Middle.
Hi there.
Hi.
So
My main question is about where do we go from here, but just a thought on the equating. When the Palestinian bus overturned, it's horrible, it's a tragedy, nobody should have celebrated. But it was an accident. It wasn't what Hamas did and what some Palestinians have been celebrating was not an accident. It was deliberate murder, rape, torture, and all sorts of awful things. But I'm very concerned about the equating. But the big question I have is, in the long run, how can Israel be expected to negotiate for peace when most of its neighbors still want Israel destroyed? That's the stated goal. And if I'm not mistaken, I think a few of the countries around there are in agreement with that Israel just shouldn't exist.
Right.
We're now, well, not we. I'm a Jew. I'm not an Israeli, but Israel is on, I think, if I remember correctly, about 7% of the original Balfour Declaration territory. How much more are they supposed to give up? And I will hang up and I will listen to.
Let me take that to Nathan, since you referenced what he was saying earlier about the central premise of his book. Nathan, your response to Beth.
Well, first of all, the celebration of the death of kindergartners, innocent kindergartners on a school bus, is reprehensible and should not be excused in any way. And what difference would it make? How is it any better that the bus was an accident? People are celebrating the deaths of innocent children on a school bus. I think the point that I was making is that dehumanization is something that is pervasive in this place, and it's something that we all need to address if we want to stop seeing this kind of bloodshed.
Let's go to Michael, who's calling from Northwest Alabama. Michael, go ahead.
Thank you tremendously. I'm a little nervous, this being my first time on a program I really admire, especially since our own streaming service no longer gets C-SPAN with its early morning telephone calls. Listen, I'm neither, to me, both sides are flawed. The average ordinary people, their well-being is my first paramount concern. President Netanyahu's decisions have been quite flawed, but Hamas is just plain pure evil. I wish that the average ordinary civilians were on the minds of all the people protesting here in the USA and Canada. Here's my question. Why are not, I've heard that none of the other Arab and or Islamic, like the largely Persian Iran, surrounding nations are taking in the Gaza Palestinians that Jerusalem urged to leave that area. Why is this, and why particularly not Jordan? Ever since 1918, with the Balfour Decree, or 1948, I've read that the Palestinians are actually Hashemites ethnically, and Jordan is their homeland. I'll take my answer off here, but thank you tremendously, all of you.
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, we've got your question there. And Deb Amos, currently all the border crossings out of Gaza are closed, so the people cannot get anywhere. But what to that question, why can't some of the neighboring countries take in some of the people from Gaza?
So, first of all, the Palestinians have been through this before. And they have been expelled from their homes, from their lands, and it is not an easy argument to make, even if the border was open with Egypt, for them to leave, because they do not believe that they could ever come back. And so that is a tough sell. Palestinians in Jordan are not Hashemites. That is a different tribe. Palestinians are called Palestinians because of where they come from. The Hashemites came from Saudi Arabia, and they're tribal people, and those two communities are very different in Jordan. But I think that the neighbors do not want to be the repository of a population that gets kicked out of an occupation in both places. So don't look for that. I'd also like to say that the truth of the matter is Jordan does not want the elimination of Israel. They don't say it, they don't act on it. Saudi Arabia was ready to make a deal with the Israelis. Countries in the Gulf have been willing, have made deals with the Israelis. They've hosted, I-24, Israel's news program, now has an office in Dubai. And there's been visits. There are financial deals. It is not the old Middle East. This is a different place. So it's not really fair to say all the neighbors want the elimination of Israel. It's simply not true.
Let's go to Jay, who's calling from New Orleans, Louisiana. Jay, welcome to you.
Yeah, hey, thank you. And I want to echo the condolences to the victims of the massacre on Saturday. But my question was related to actually a comment that Tom Friedman had made yesterday about attributing part of the issue with the failed Netanyahu governance. The fact that he's had corruption problems and he's got a very weak cabinet, and so we heard about potentially that it was all failed policy. But what's the relative contributions of failed policy versus also failed governance, particularly since it's relevant to potentially where we may be in 2024 in the United States?
Great question, Jay. Nathan Thrall, this is the first time we've had an opportunity to talk about the Netanyahu government, and many I've heard people in Israel say over the last few days, now's not the time, but it will come to talk about the failings of the Netanyahu government and the corruption and all of that. What do you say there in response?
This failure to prevent and deal in a timely way with the attack from Hamas and the failure of the intelligence services to detect that it was being planned. It is the largest Israeli political and military and intelligence failure since 1973. And this will have enormous political repercussions. There will be a committee of investigation over this incident. Many people will be remembered as responsible for this failure, and they will not be forgiven for it. It is astounding to Israelis that this could have happened in the first place without being detected, and that, days after this occurred, this is not an army that conducted this attack. This is a group of militants in a besieged Gaza Strip under land, sea, and air blockade, and who are being surveilled like no other population in the world. And days after they broke through the barrier and took over some Israeli towns and streets and military bases, they were still in control of streets in Israeli towns outside of Gaza. And I think Israelis cannot fathom that could be the case. So there will be a very, very high price to pay, which is also part of why this moment is so dangerous, because this government knows that, and they know that they must do something extraordinary in order to escape the judgment of the Israeli public.
Deb Amos, will the government, though, have any constraints because of that, because of their awareness of the public perception of what happened in terms of their response? Are they going to respond in the most, let's say, right-wing, hawkish way possible, or will they face any pressure to do something different?
Boy, that will be something to watch. So first, it may not be the time to talk about it, but the Israeli press is. Every day there's a headline that says Netanyahu must go, what pressure that must be upon him, because his legacy is in doubt. 1973, Golda Meir lost her job in a similar gargantuan intelligence failure. In this case, we have a failure of imagination, which is a bigger issue for Israel. And so there will be a reckoning. The question, I think, remains, what will the government do? We know that there is a war cabinet, that the ultra-extreme far right, who also share some responsibility in the failure of this, they moved troops to the West Bank to protect settlers who were having prayer services in the middle of Palestinian towns. That's why they weren't on the border with Gaza. And so now you have a different political arraignment in the cabinet. Does that make a difference? Does it mean that Netanyahu is the one who gets to say, it's all out war and be damned the consequences? Or do you have cooler heads in that cabinet that say, all right, the better thing for your legacy is to find a way to do what we need to do without losing even more Israeli troops in a ground offensive in Gaza, and a huge loss of life. So I think we don't know yet how the cabinet will respond. They have been restrained so far. They have not gone in. Mm-hmm. They are sitting on the border and they are waiting to see what happens, how Hamas responds. And so it's hard to answer that question. We are all waiting to see.
We are just about out of time, but I do want to go. Tolliver's been keeping an eye on what's happening on social media and coming in online at listentothemiddle.com. Mm-hmm. Tolliver, what are you seeing?
Yeah, Joan from Lincoln, Nebraska asks, can you help us sort out the Palestinian groups and which are political versus military? And is there still a Palestinian Liberation Organization? Alicia in Chicago writes,
let me just, before we go on any further, let me see if Nathan can just very briefly answer that question, sorting out the Palestinian groups.
Yeah, sure. The Palestine Liberation Organization, the PLO, is the umbrella group for all of the non-Islamist Palestinian political factions, and Hamas and Islamic Jihad are two factions that are outside of the PLO. And many Palestinian political factions have both political and military wings. Many of the PLO factions have military wings that are quite small, but military wings that are in Gaza, just as Hamas is also a political faction that has a military wing.
Tolliver, maybe one more.
Okay. Alicia in Chicago writes, I agree that what Hamas did in the brutal killings of innocent people was horrific and that Hamas should pay for their crimes, but I also don't agree with the way that Israel is also attacking innocent Palestinians and cutting off their resources.
Well, you can reach out to us at listentothemiddle.com. You can leave us a message at 844-464-3353. It's amazing how fast an hour goes. So many great calls today. I want to thank my guests, Deborah Amos, longtime international correspondent for NPR, now at Princeton University. Deb, great to have you on the program.
Thank you for having me.
And Nathan Thrall, author of A Day in the Life of Abed Salama, Anatomy of a Jerusalem Tragedy. Nathan, thank you to you.
A pleasure to be here. Thank you.
And thanks to our DJ Tolliver and Nashville Public Radio for hosting him this week. Join us next week, same time, same place. Tolliver, what is our topic for next week's show?
We are going to talk about the impact of America's opioid crisis, and we're asking what solutions are working in your community.
And the reason we're giving that question to you now is because not everyone is listening to the show live, but we want to hear from you either way at 844-4MIDDLE. ListenToTheMiddle.com. You can drop us a line. You can sign up for our weekly newsletter there as well. The Middle is brought to you by Long Nook Media and produced by Joanne Jennings, John Barth, Harrison Patino, Danny Alexander, and Charlie Little. Our technical director is Jason Croft. Our theme music was composed by Andrew Haig. Thanks to our partners at Illinois Public Media, Nashville Public Radio, iHeartMedia, and the more than 370 public radio stations that are making it possible for people across the country to listen to The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. Talk to you next week.
the last couple years, didn't we learn that the folding chair was invented by Black people because of what happened in Alabama?
The Montgomery Brawl.
This Black History Month, the podcast Selective Ignorance with Mandy B unpacks Black history and culture with comedy, clarity, and conversations that shake the status quo. The Crown Act in New York was signed in July of 2019, and that is a bill that was passed to prohibit discrimination based on hairstyles associated with race. To hear this and more, listen to Selective Ignorance with Mandy B from the Black Effect Podcast Network on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
1969. Malcolm and Martin are gone. America is in crisis. And at Morehouse College, the students make their move.
These students, including a young Samuel L. Jackson, locked up the members of the Board of Trustees, including Martin Luther King Sr. It's the true story of protest and rebellion in Black American history that you'll never forget. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba.
Listen to The A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
When segregation was a law, one mysterious Black club owner, Charlie Fitzgerald, had his own rules.
Segregation in the day, integration at night.
It was like stepping on another world.
Was he a businessman, a criminal, a hero?
Charlie was an example of power. They had to crush him.
Charlie's Place, from Atlas Obscura and Visit Myrtle Beach. Listen to Charlie's Place on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Ryder Strong, and I have a new podcast called The Red Weather. In 1995, my neighbor, Anna Trainer, disappeared from a commune.
It was nature and trees and praying and drugs.
So no, I am not your guru.
And back then, I lied to everybody.
They have had this case for 30 years.
I'm going back to my hometown to uncover the truth. Listen to The Red Weather on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.